I met Maureen Richmond, oh gosh, 4 to 5 years ago, somewhere in there. We're both heritage studies doctoral candidates at this point, but that's how we met. Maureen's a native of Arkansas who, for more than 4 decades, has studied, taught, and counseled through astrology, which is a folk practice with roots in the religion of classical Greece, the symbolic philosophies of late Mediterranean antiquity, and the doctrines of natural correspondence common in medieval Europe. Maureen began her personal studies of astrology and related esoteric disciplines while first attending college in Memphis. And she then studied with some well-known astrologers in that area and on the East Coast. And she continued to study up until and through the 1980s when she began teaching and advising in the early 80s. Maureen has since studied with and lectured for the two major astrological organizations in the U.S., the American Federation of Astrologers and the National Council of Geocosmic Research. She has specialized in the study of long astrological cycles and their correlation with world trends and events, local astrology, fixed star influence, and the life pattern of the individual as revealed in the astrological birth chart. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts in English and Professional Writing from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, a Master's of Arts in English and Creative Writing from Southern New Hampshire University, and a Master of Arts in Heritage Studies from Arkansas State. So I'm really happy to have Maureen with us, and I'll let her go ahead and take over from here.
Thank you, Lauren. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us, whether you're joining today live or later by recording. It's great to be speaking with everybody. Lauren told the story of how we know each other, and yeah, it's been a very interesting and fun acquaintance. I think it was 2018. Lauren, when we first met, it was August of 2018, so it's 4 years ago exactly, when we both entered the Heritage Studies doctoral program at Arkansas State University in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And we took a lot of courses, a lot of different courses, but one of the courses that Lauren and I took together was called Intangible Heritage. We took that in the fall of 2020, wasn't it? I believe it was. Yeah, so one of the things that we learned in that course was that intangible heritage is a type of heritage that, as you might expect, is not like a stone or a tangible or a heavy object, an architectural remnant or anything of that nature, but is knowledge or practices or beliefs or art forms that have been handed down traditionally from the past on to other generations. Folklore is considered a type of intangible heritage. So we learned to use those two terms together, intangible heritage and folklore. So you'll hear me use the term heritage as we go along, particularly in talking about astrology and humanity's relationship with the sky as a type of planetary heritage. As a matter of fact, if that idea intrigues you, you can learn a lot more by looking on the website of the UNESCO Astronomical Heritage Portal. UNESCO, that's an agency of the United Nations. It's the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. Educational, Scientific, and Cultural. Yeah, that's right, UNESCO. And has a wonderful website that details all kinds of historical and architectural sites the world around that celebrate humanity's relationship with the sky. Some of them are astronomical observatories from ancient times. Some are astronomical observatories from modern times. Others are temples and buildings that were built to align with celestial factors. So that's a wonderful resource to look at, and it ties in with what we're going to be talking about today. I think I'll go on to share screen now, if that's okay with everybody. Here we go. Astrology as a folk life tradition in history and practice. And here in the background, you can see an image of a spiral galaxy, which is like all spiral galaxies, and it's like our spiral galaxy. You know, planet Earth and our solar system fits into this picture. We're said to be on one of the outer arms of the Milky Way galaxy. So like in this picture somewhere out in here. And you can see that from anywhere that one might look, the sky or space is so rich with bodies of light, with brilliance, with radiance, with luminescence. And that's what inspired the creation of astrology, beginning way back long ago. Now you could ask the question, well, but what is astrology today as a folk life tradition, or as a folk tradition, or as intangible heritage? Here's a definition I'd like to offer you. Astrology today, as in the year 2022, astrology is a study of arrangements of the sun, moon, planets, and stars as compared and correlated to human experience. Can everybody see that on their screen okay? All right. A study of the arrangements of the sun, moon, planets, and stars as compared and correlated to human experience. A lot of people think astrology is what's in the newspapers, the predictions about the sun signs. Everything is based on the birth date. Well, that is a portion of astrology, but it's a very small portion of astrology. In fact, it's an infinitesimally small part of astrology. Astrology is much bigger than that because there's much more to our view of space from the earth than just the sun or the sun sign. So I'd like to offer you a little bit more complex definition as well. Can you all still see the screen okay? Say yes.
Yes, it looks good.
Okay, thank you. I made a change on my display here so that I could see the whole thing. The thumbnails were in the way. So this more complex definition of astrology I'll offer you now. It's a system for mapping the situation of the solar system, the whole solar system, at the time of a person's birth, and for correlating the resulting diagram with traits of character and significant trends of life. So what is in the solar system? Well, Earth and all the other planets. They all play in. This is a definition of astrology as it pertains to individuals. But there's more. Further, Western astrology, which is what I practice, is a system for studying the arrangements of the planets in our solar system, the sun and the moon as seen from a geocentric perspective, and deducing correlations to human events between the greater systemic environment and human affairs. This second definition includes astrological factors, analysis of the astrological factors that affect everybody on planet Earth all at the same time. So right off the bat, what I've introduced to you is the concept that there are at least two levels of astrological influence. One pertains to the individual. The other pertains to the collective of humanity as a whole. That's the second definition here. And it includes planetary cycles that even exceed the length of a human life. You don't often hear about this level of astrological influence in popular astrological discussions. in newspaper astrology that deals with the prediction of sun sign daily events, you'll hear none of it. It's a wholly different analysis of astrological influence, but it is part of astrology, and it includes things like planetary pair cycles, which run of variable lengths, taking the planets in our solar system in pairs. It's possible to deduce various cycles, including the Neptune-Pluto cycle, which runs for about 494 years, almost 500, and the Uranus-Neptune cycle, which runs about 172. And then there are, of course, the cycles caused by the passage of the planets through the signs of the zodiac. And those are shorter, such as the passage of Pluto through a sign about 16, 17 years, Neptune about 13 to 14, Uranus takes about 7 years to get through an astrological sign, Saturn about 2.5. So you can see that there are many types of cycles and many varying lengths of cycles that affect both individuals and the collective humanity. And both of these levels of analysis integrate positions of what are called the fixed stars. Whatever in the world of the fixed stars? Well, the fixed stars are the brilliant points of light that we see in the dark night sky that do not move about. There are some very bright points of light in the night sky, which we see that move about quite obviously over time. And those are the planets of our solar system. But in the beginning, humanity wasn't certain there was a difference between the two. It was a major discovery in itself that some of those points of light moved from our perspective on planet Earth and others didn't. The ones that didn't were named the fixed stars. Here's an astrological chart that results from calculating the arrangement, or actually using a birth time to calculate the arrangement of the solar system at the time of a person's birth. This is my chart, and I was born on December 8, 1951 at 10:34 a.m. Central Standard Time in Texarkana, Arkansas. And this is the chart that results from it. And if you're new to astrology, don't worry. I'm not expecting that any of this makes any sense to you at all. So let me give you an orientation to it, just like I learned to get myself oriented to this kind of chart when I started out. You'll notice, of course, that the whole thing is in a circular format. That's of utmost importance. This circle out here symbolizes and stands for space, all of space. And this circle inside symbolizes and stands for planet Earth. Immediately, someone may be inspired to ask, do astrologers think that the Earth is at the center of the solar system? Here's the answer. No, we do not. We know that the sun is at the center of the solar system. No doubt about it. But an astrological map is a map of the heavens as seen from our vantage point. That's it. In other words, where we stand. And where do we stand? We stand on planet Earth. We don't stand on the sun. Our view and our experience of the heavens is as from this planet. And so that's the premise from which astrology works. So again, here, this circle, this big circle in the middle symbolizes and stands for the Earth. Now, immediately you can see none of this is to scale. This is much bigger than it would be if it were to scale. And these symbols out here, which are for the sun, the moon, and the various planets, would be at various distances. This is not a diagram to scale, but rather a schematic diagram of the way the planets in the solar system were distributed in the space around the Earth as seen from the Earth. Now you'll notice that this diagram is divided up into sectors. These sectors are called the houses of the chart. They are the divisions of space around Earth. Earth turns to the east, that's this way, and is constantly changing the view of the heavens as a result. This is the east point or ascendant, and it changes continuously with regard to the background of deeper space. And the background of deeper space is demarcated by this circle containing the signs of the zodiac. And we'll get to how this is all defined in just a moment. But what I want you to notice here is that it's a circular form. It represents a solar system. It contains 12 divisions and symbols for the planets in those divisions. The planets are also associated with exact mathematical positions. Those mathematical positions relate to these little hash marks you see here. These T9C things, there are 360 of them all the way around the circle. And you'll recognize that figure as the definition of a circle, the 360 degrees. That's part of the mapping system. Each one of these signs has exactly 30 degrees in it. There are 12 of them. 30 times 12 equals the 360 degrees of the circle. We still haven't learned everything there is to learn about this, but that's a start. That's a start. In fact, these are the building blocks of modern astrological technique, the basics of modern astrological technique, in other words. And you just saw it here on the diagram. This is what's used in mainstream modern astrology for individual character analysis and for analysis of specific periods of time. Here's the system written out for you in English. It basically tells us the components of the astrological art or technique as it is used in current time. It includes the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 houses of the chart, and in order to have those 12 houses, there has to be the calculation of the ascendant on the basis of the birth time, date, and place. Just like what you see here, birth time, date, and place. That establishes this value and therefore the arrangement of all these houses. That's to say a lot. I know it's confusing if this is new information for you. I'll keep explaining. The chart and the technique also includes the use of 10 celestial bodies. That's the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and 2 factors called the nodes, N-O-D-E-S, nodes of the moon, which are not tangible celestial bodies, but rather mathematical points in space that astrologers have discovered are important. They're caused, the nodes of the moon are defined by the intersection of the moon's orbital plane around the Earth with the Earth's orbital plane around the sun. It's a lot to take in one moment, I know, but it's a mathematical point. And you see the symbols for this in charts continuously. Here's one right here, the lunar north node. And I'll come back to that. Also, part of today's astrological technique are the aspects or geometrical relationships between the components of the chart, we call the planets, the sun, the moon, and the planets properly called. There's a way to deduce exactly how many degrees of separation there are between these factors, degrees of separation. That's really important. That establishes the geometry, which you see drawn in here of the particular chart. It's not necessary to draw these lines in to deduce the relationships once you learn the system, and you can quickly figure out from knowing the relationships of the signs how much, what the arc of difference is between the 2 bodies that you're looking at. But anyway, you can see these geometrical relationships are part of the technique. Also, analysis of the chart includes the sorting out or the dividing and categorizing of the signs according to their polarity, masculine versus feminine, according to their element families, fire, earth, air, and water, and according to their modality families, cardinal, fixed, and mutable. That's the basic set of considerations for analyzing an individual chart. So that's the intangible heritage that we have accumulated over time in this particular folk art. Here are your 12 signs that you're familiar with. You've seen represented so many times, so many places. Aries, the ram; Taurus, the bull, a little bit blurry, but that's what it is. Gemini, the twins; Cancer, the crab; Leo, the lion; Virgo, the virgin; Libra, the scales; Scorpio, the scorpion; Sagittarius, the centaur; Capricorn, the goat; Aquarius, the water bearer; and Pisces, the fishes. There you see the symbols for the signs included as well. Here's another graphic showing the very same thing. 12 signs of the zodiac that you recognize from having seen them reproduced all over, popular media and on T-shirts and beach towels and purses and jewelry and all kinds of things. This is very familiar to you, no doubt. I hope you're noticing that these 12 divisions of the zodiac look a whole lot like the 12 houses. And that's important because the meanings of these individual signs have imparted their meanings to the related houses. And we'll come back to that point. But for right now, we see the 12 signs. And I want you to know that each one of these signs is associated with a planet that is perceived to be light, its disposition. Aries, fiery Aries, likened to Mars. Comfort-loving Taurus to Venus. Inquisitive Gemini, Mercury. Sensitive Cancer to the moon. Courageous Leo to the bright, invincible sun. Studious Virgo, also to Mercury, like Gemini. Artistically and aesthetically sensitive Libra to Venus, similar to Taurus. Scorpio, connected with both Mars and Pluto. Mars anciently, modernly with Pluto. Sagittarius with Jupiter. Capricorn with Saturn. Aquarius with anciently Saturn. And in modern astrology, Uranus. Pisces, connected in ancient astrology with Jupiter and in modern astrology with Neptune. You might wonder where that system came from. It comes from dividing the zodiac right here between Cancer and Leo and putting the moon and the sun there. Then Mercury here and here, Venus here and there, Mars here and there, Jupiter here and there, and Saturn. And that was the ancient origin of the rulership system. Now, of course, we've got some modern planets that have to be worked in, and they've been put in at Scorpio with Pluto, at Aquarius for Uranus, and at Pisces for Neptune, because of perceived similarity of the planets' natures. Here are those same 12 houses of the chart again, which I just want you to look at and get that in your mind. And this is the same idea with the numberings. The numberings of the houses. It's like so. It follows the same pattern as the numbering of the signs. First sign, Aries; second sign, Taurus; third sign, and so on. Each one of these houses has a particular area of life that it governs. And I've written out the meanings of the various houses here. It's a lot of information to take into your mind all at once. But the point is, there's a different area of life for each one of the houses. The sense of self in house 1. Resources, talents, valuables, and possessions in house 2. Mentality, perception, and information gathering in house 3. And so on. Now I'm going to stop share and come back for a moment and chat with you. We'll come back to this. Hey, what kind of questions or comments do we have to that point?
Okay, I have a question. Why are there whatever, there's four of some things like the elements, and then there were six of that last thing that you said, and I forget the word you used.
That would be the polarities, the
The
masculine and feminine. Yeah,
So
there would be.
what's the difference there? How's that work? I've never heard of the polarities until today, and I felt like I knew a little bit about astrology. So, yeah.
Well, that's a very interesting question, and it goes back to the development of Greek metaphysics to answer that. And so let me lay a little bit deeper background for the answer to that question. Astrology is a very old body of knowledge. Exactly how old we're getting ready to delve into. So Lauren's question is right on point. How old? At least it's 5,000 years old, going back to around the year 3,000 for certain elements of it, 3,000 BC, I should say, BCE. But it was during the phase of development of Greek philosophy and physics that some of the ideas attached to astrology were developed. And one set of this was developed in the Pythagorean mystery schools of what would that be, in about 350 BCE, I believe, something like that, 350 BCE. And the Pythagoreans studied number and the principles of number. They felt that number, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number was a divine agency in and of itself, mediating in between the high levels of unformed reality in the mind of deity and the tangible world here that we can see and that we live in. It was a creative agency that mediated, made it possible for deity to communicate or impress its will into the material sphere. So they were really into numbers. And after studying numbers, they came to the conclusion that all the odd numbers had a certain characteristic and all the even numbers had a certain characteristic. And the odd numbers to the Pythagoreans were masculine, outgoing, dominant, energetic. And the even numbers were, by comparison, feminine, attractive, ingathering, and more passive. So wherever they found the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 line was a certain kind of characteristic, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, something else. So that was then applied to the 12 signs of the astrological sequence. And therefore, it's going to divide it into two because we've got two types. So we get 6 of one, 6 of the other. And the odd numbered signs came out masculine. That'd be Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, and Aquarius. And then the even numbered signs would have a more feminine characteristic, and that would be Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces. That doesn't mean that people born under those signs can only be men or women, that only men are born under Aries. No, women are born as Aries too, but it imparts a characteristic. What? Go ahead.
So then two of the elements are, does that cut across two elements too and divide, like it's water and earth signs are all feminine and fire and air are masculine?
Let's go back to some of our diagrams and answer that question. That's a great question.
Sorry, anybody else is free to unmute and ask questions also. Just interrupt me.
Oh, what happened? Oh, okay, here we are. Yes, you were asking about the appropriately for a Capricorn, you're asking about the way that the signs are categorized. Capricorn is I love Capricorn. Capricorn's so organized and practical and orderly, and her question is evidence of that. She's Capricorn. So here we have a nifty little chart that divides the signs up by elements: fire, earth, air, and water. I know that's blurry, but that's what it says: fire, earth, air, and water. So those are columns going down this way. And then it divides it by the family of three that Lauren was referring to, the cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So let's look at the fire. That's Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. And the earth, Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. The air, Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini. The water, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So these signs are arranged according to their modalities as well. So these are all modalities here. These are all modalities here, and these are all modalities. These are all elements, 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 elements. We have two pieces of information in this one chart that we can look at. But you were asking about which one of these are masculine and which feminine. And there's a very simple answer. All the earth signs and the water are feminine. All the fire and air are masculine. Very simple. Fire and air masculine, earth and water feminine. And we can see that on the chart right here. Again, I'm sorry it's blurry, but you can see these are the signs going around here, starting with Aries, around the chart. And where you see the pluses are the masculine polarities. Air, and that's a fire sign there, air sign, fire, air, fire, air. And where you see the minus signs would be the signs of feminine polarity, and that's Taurus, which is earth, Cancer, which is water, Virgo, earth, Scorpio, water, Capricorn, earth, and Pisces, water. So that gives us more of a description of what the signs are all about. These signs, what their characteristics are. Astrology is really a divide and conquer game. The more you know about these categories, the more you know about each one of these signs. And that's what makes it easier, believe it or not, makes it a lot easier. In trying to learn about or memorize the characteristics of the signs, the psychological characteristics of the signs, one relies on the nature of the symbol involved, like the animal or the object, and the element and the modality. And that tells you the story of that sign. Does that help, Lauren?
Yeah, but modality is the cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And
Yes.
I'm sure you're going to tell us the difference between those three as you
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll tell you right now. Let's go to that chart where we have those.
That's all my questions for so far.
Cardinal signs initiate activities. Why? Because they initiate these seasons. Aries, first of spring, Cancer, the beginning of summer, Libra, the beginning of autumn, and Capricorn, the beginning of winter. So they initiate. The fixed signs hold the pattern because they come in the middle of the season there. They perpetuate and stabilize. And the mutable signs provide a bridge or a transition from one state to the next.
That was great. I feel like I just unlocked so much with that short explanation. That's awesome.
It really does. I mean, this is how to understand the workings of the signs. It's much easier than trying to memorize every last little thing about them. I'm a Sagittarius, which is mutable fire. So I'm going to have, as far as my sun sign goes, I'm going to have these characteristics of the mutable sign, which is being in or helping, bridge concepts and ideas or make a transition from one state of being to the next, as well as the fire stuff. And so the elements also have their own characteristics. Fire is energetic, outgoing, confident, maybe sometimes overwhelming, too strong, has to be controlled carefully. Earth is very different. It's restrained, quiet, slower, takes things at an even pace, and is stabilizing and can be relied on for continuity and tradition. The air element, we've got three signs there, are social, interactive, like to move about like the wind or the breeze, and share ideas and concepts, greetings and hellos, society, parties, literature. Those things are all of the air nature. And the water signs are sensitive, reflective, imaginative, sometimes hypersensitive. Sometimes they have to manage their water sensitivity as carefully as the fire people have to manage their ebullience, and as the earth people have to manage their tendency to vegetate or stay in one place too long or one condition for a long time or resist change. And the same as the air people have to manage their own tendency to be undecided or up in the air or all over the place or too widely distributed, right? Spread across too many projects. That's an issue of the air sign. So the more planets or signs that one has in any of the, when the planets or factors in the chart that one has in any of these elements, the more you tend to be like that element. Got a question for me?
No, not right now. I'm just nodding along. I love this.
I had a question.
Okay, please go ahead.
I think you answered this, but just to clarify, actually, on that birth chart that you're showing right now,
Yes.
assuming that the different placements of things are different from different vantage points on the earth, or maybe I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. That's why you need to start from the birthplace, which gives you your geographical coordinates, your longitude and your latitude. Absolutely, very bright question. You must have mathematical aptitude.
No, no. I'm an Aquarius.
You're an Aquarius?
Yeah.
Oh, Aquarians make excellent astrologers. Well, you're absolutely right. It certainly does make a difference. The drawing of the diagram and the resulting diagram is greatly dependent upon the exact positioning of the birth on the earth, where the birth happens. So that astrological charts for people who are born in extreme north latitudes look very different than birth charts that are made or erected for people born in mid latitudes or temperate world or closer down to the equator even. It definitely matters. I want to bring you back to, thank you for that question. That was a very perceptive question. I appreciate that. Let's come back to this discussion of elements from what Lauren was asking, and we'll just look at my chart for an example. And I'd like to draw your attention to this grouping of planets right here. And you can see that's this, I'll tell you, that's the Mars symbol, the symbol for Saturn, and the symbol for Neptune. I don't expect you to know that. There is a legend down here at the bottom that would tell you, but you may have not had a chance to integrate all that. So that's what it is, 3 planets right there, and they're all in the sign of Libra. You see those little marks for Libra right there? Mars is at the 8th degree and 9th minute, call it 8 degrees of Libra, Saturn at 13 Libra, and Neptune at 21 Libra, but they're all in Libra. You can see this Libra symbol here. So Libra is, let's go back to our chart down here. One of the air signs, right? It's in the air grouping and in the cardinal modality. So it's both of those things. It's got all the pluses and the minuses of air element and all the pluses and the minuses, or the good and the bad, I should say, of the cardinal element. So cardinal modality. Cardinal modality is given towards leadership. It's begins things. It provides the impetus. So what could be good and what could be bad about that? Well, it could be a person who's motivated to start projects, and the bad of it could be what? Too many projects, always starting things. And the air element, flexible, open to new ideas, interactive, social, but what's the potential drawback there is a scattering of forces and a distraction or tendency to get involved in too many different projects all at one time, or to make too many commitments to many different people at all at the same time. It's a very social sign. Does that make sense to everybody? What do we got next? Okay, so we've looked at some of the basic elements. Well, those we have not looked at that, excuse me. We need to come back to this too. Where did the nature? Here are the symbols for the planets and the sun and the moon. Sun and the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Here's the modern symbol for Uranus. This is also one that's used sometimes. Neptune, and 2 for Pluto. And those are the symbols that you have seen placed in the individual chart. You could ask, well, where did the characteristics associated with these celestial bodies come from? Well, basically, Greek and Roman mythology. Of course, Roman mythology came from Greek mythology. So the real answer is from Greek mythology. That's the answer. And here are the characteristics. The sun is the sun astrologically. The meanings of the sun astrologically are derived from its originating deity figure, Helios or Apollo, connoting vitality, conscious awareness, consciousness, and personal identity. The moon from Artemis and Diana, women, emotions, environment, natural rhythms. Mercury from Hermes. These are basically the Roman forms of the Greek deities. Mercury from Hermes, who symbolizes young people, mind, intelligence, thought, word, language, communication, the learning process in school. Venus, who hails from Aphrodite, symbol of beauty, comfort, art, decoration, love, romance, and attraction. Of course, yes, romance. Venus is one of the big important planets that everybody's always curious about in their charts, or what it's doing at any given time, because yes, it is the planet of love and romance. Though the substance of relationships comes from a good bit more than just Venus when we're looking at 2 charts or the individual chart, and potential for love, romance, marriage, family making, and so forth. Mars hails from the ancient Greek god Ares, symbolizing men, males, conflict, aggression, physical prowess, competition, desire, the capacity to fight, maybe even to engage in warfare, or today's equivalent of warfare, competition. And Jupiter hails from Zeus, connoting authority, power, command, wealth, dignity, and religion, and so on. Saturn from Kronos, maturity. Uranus from Uranos, sky, freedom, independence, innovation. The Neptune from Poseidon and its correlates, and Pluto from the Greek god of the underworld, Hades, death, resurrection, transformation, hidden or buried resources. Okay, here's just a representation of the symbols used for the nodes of the moon. And you can see it's very simple. One's called the head of the dragon, the other the tail of the dragon. That's traditional usage, which is sort of graphic for the idea of the moon's path having to do with the dragon through space, the head and the tail of the dragon. And here are the symbols for the geometrical relationships and the separation in terms of degrees that they represent. I don't expect you to master all of this. We just want to have an overall look at what astrology is, what it really is made of. It's a lot, isn't it? The polarities of the signs, we studied that, and the element and modality families. So great. Where did this come from? Basically from the ancient Middle East, or the Near East, around 3000 BCE. And what arose at that time was the underlying assumption or belief that there are gods, that there is deity in the universe, and specifically in our solar system, and that it communicates with humanity through celestial bodies. In other words, that the sky was some kind of expression of deity. And it may be difficult for modern humanity to believe that, or accept that, or see how that might be so. But when we stop and think about what life was like in the ancient world, it's much easier to see. There was no electric light. The night sky was a very dramatic and overwhelming spectacle. Many of the people that lived in this region where astrology originated could see from one horizon to the other. It's not a heavily forested area. It's an area of desert. So they had a huge expanse of the night sky that they could see, the dome of the sky. And if you've ever seen a dark sky, you know it's nothing like what we see in terms of the sky in cities. In cities, when we look at the sky, we see one or two little dots of light, maybe. We see the moon, of course, we see the sun during the daytime. But in the night sky, we see very few stars. If you've seen a dark sky, it's breathtaking. The whole sky is alive with shimmering and twinkling points of light. There's more light up there than there is blackness. It's amazing. It just takes your breath. So they saw that every night, you know, and the night sky was a companion to the daily life of humanity because people went outside more and looked to the sky for an understanding or an orientation in time. They looked to the sky to know what the seasons were, and after much observation, star patterns would tell them it was the time, well, when they could see certain star patterns at night, would tell them that it was the time for sowing or for reaping in the agricultural societies when that became part of humanity's experience. So right around this period of time is when this idea of the sky as a communication device from deity arose. And around this same period of time, the planets were identified as different points of light in the sky that moved while the other stars stayed still. And those moving points were named for the deities of the religions practiced in this area. So this is a different set of religions than was practiced up here in Greece. So these had different names in the beginning. And the planets had different names in the beginning. You could ask the question, what about all the earthworks and the various architectural evidences of awareness of the sky and when they were built as an age of astrology? Yes. So this little map right here shows us dates of construction for megalithic stone architecture, things like Stonehenge, Newgrange, and other similar arrangements that were aligned to particular stars or functioned as observatories for the lunar and solar cycles. These occur all over Europe and were built between 1000 BC and going back to 4700 BC. So that's, if you take into consideration that astrology includes the study of solar and lunar cycles, astrology can be this old, which would make it nearly 7,000 years old at this point. Or you can go back even farther and look at the prehistoric records, which show that humanity began making observations of the lunar cycle, the night sky, and the planets in cave paintings, rock carvings, and on marked bones as early as 30,000 BCE. So if we include these considerations as part of the development of astrology, then it vanishes into the great distance as far as its age. Recently, it was discovered in Scotland that around 8000 BCE, prehistoric peoples constructed a massive earthwork for tracking lunar and solar cycles. So that's even older than Stonehenge. Some people estimate that Stonehenge was built somewhere between 3700 BCE and 1600 BCE. Others around that same area were built in that same time pocket. These constructions contain visual alignments with sunrise and sunset on the summer and winter solstices, as well with moonrise and moonset. So that's, you could say that's a part of astrology. How are we doing for time, Lauren?
You have about 8 minutes or so left, but then I provide about 30 minutes for questions. So really you're doing fine.
Okay. Um, Parts of Babylonian mathematics and astrology, parts of Babylonian mathematics that were necessary to do astrology were developed around 3000 to the period 3000 to 300 BCE. So you could say parts of astrology go back that far, including the conceptualization of the 360 degrees of a circle. That goes way back. A more conservative estimate on the age of Stonehenge is provided by UNESCO. They say it was built between 2500 and 2300 BCE. So if it and its companion constructions can be construed as knowledge or evidence of people that had knowledge about astrological factors, well, then astrology goes back that far and came from there. Let's skip some of this and go to what we, these are all important ideas, but we're going to run out of time, and I'll come back to them if you really need to know. Here's the four element theory that appeared about 450 BCE, Lauren, in Greek philosophy. Personal birth charts began to be used around 400 BCE. There's evidence of that. The Pythagorean mystery school about 400 BCE. I was off by 50 years. Coming up with the theory about the polarity of the numbers. And there's a date that I want to get you to right in here. 25 CE, Common Era. A bunch of texts were written in the Middle Eastern area that were associated to the legendary Hermes Trismegistus. So these texts were written by various people, and it was the fashion of the time for mystics to take a legendary or imaginary identity as the author of the book. And that's where that came from. This notion that all these texts were written by Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus was an imaginary figure, a deity or a spirit of intelligence. In this period, a great many texts were written, and they all incorporated this doctrine of correspondences, which was the idea that as above, so below, or as the sky is, so is earth, or as the sky is, so are the affairs of humanity. And that's what developed into the doctrine of correspondences. The whole doctrine of correspondences, it led to the idea that the zodiac is the pattern for the human body. Like so. Isn't that fun? Every part of the human body is corresponds to or ruled by these signs and their related planets, with Aries at the head, Taurus at the neck, Gemini, the twins at the shoulders, Cancer at the breast, Leo, the heart and the back, Virgo, the intestines and the digestive system, Libra, the kidneys and lower back, Scorpio, the reproductive and eliminative functions, Sagittarius, the powerful thighs for running around all over the world like a centaur, Capricorn, the practical knees, Aquarius, the calves, and Pisces, the feet. So this is the doctrine of correspondences that really generated medical astrology in the medieval period. This is how it was done. This is how medical analysis and diagnostics and prescriptions were done for a period of time. Here's another picture of the same thing. Anatomy of a man's body as governed by the 12 constellations. This is a poorly reproduced but medieval chart of the body correspondences to the parts of the zodiac. Same thing again. Here you see these little strings attached with the implication that the zodiacal archetypes are pulling the strings of the human being and making them be, making things be as they are through the body. And another much more artistically done diagram from the medieval period, which shows Aries at the head, Taurus wrapped around the neck. There's the emblem for the crab, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. And then these same archetypes are distributed around the edge here, with the idea in mind, again, that the human is a reflection of the greater cosmic environment, very literally. Lo and behold, this shows up in Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. It's a folk wisdom that was such a widespread frame of reference that Shakespeare could actually joke on it, riff on it, make variations on it, build comedy on it. And it happens in the first act, second scene, line 127, where Sir Andrew Aguecheek, of course his name is a joke too, says to Sir Tony Belch, "Shall we set about some revels?" And Belch replies, "Well, what else shall we do? Were we not born under Taurus?" Interestingly, Shakespeare's application of the correspondence is perfectly correct. For in Elizabethan popular astrology, Taurus was linked with Venus, and the Venus disposition was characterized, according to William Lilly, astrologer of the time, loving mirth in words and action, rather drinking much, prone to venery. That means promiscuity, oft entangled in love matters. So shall we set about some revels? Shall we party, in other words? But of course, we were born under Taurus. We're given to that. Mind you, Shakespeare's writing this in a period of time when Elizabethan England was tightly controlled under censorship, and literature and everything was expected to conform to the Church of England's proscription. So here he is riffing about pagan knowledge in one of his plays openly. So I don't think he could have done that unless everybody knew. This was basically a folk tradition. The same conversation, by the way, Aguecheek and Sir Tony Belch are portrayed in Twelfth Night as a couple of drunks, a couple of ne'er-do-wells who are comic figures. So they keep it up. This one's even better in Act 1, Scene 3, lines 128 through 132. Still based wholly on the medieval astrological concept of correspondences. Same question. What else shall we do? Were we not born under Taurus? And Aguecheek answers, Taurus, that's sides and heart. Of course it's not, but then Belch tries to correct him with, no, sir, it's legs and thighs. Well, they're both wrong, because sides and heart are another sign. That's Leo, and legs and thighs, what's that? Sagittarius. So what's going on here? Shakespeare accomplishes two objectives with this exchange. He played to the popular Elizabethan interest in astrological correspondences on one hand, what could only be the popular interest, or it wouldn't be in here, and on the other, used the moment to make Aguecheek and Belch appear even more inebriated, idiotic, and comic, because they can't remember the right correspondences. So you'd have to know the system very well to make a joke like this.
Right. And they obviously knew the correspondences to the body as well.
Exactly. And I think the reason why is because everybody did. It was common knowledge. It was knowledge of the folk. Who went to see these plays? Everybody. They stood down on the floor beneath the stage, and that's where the rabble rousers were.
Right.
The common people. These plays were written to appeal to and amuse, or the comedies were written to appeal to and amuse the common people. Here it is, right here. What's he doing? He's talking to them about their knowledge of astrology. There are other figures in Twelfth Night who invoke various of the Roman gods, including Mercury and Jove, which is Jupiter, or Zeus. And then there's one that also calls upon Vulcan, and there's even a hidden reference to Saturn. So several of these figures get in there, and I'm mindful of our time, so if we have time, I'll come back and read this. But you can see there, several of these figures are referred to in 12th night. Here's something important to bear in mind when we think about astrology as a folk knowledge. It's often presented as a system for predicting the future. That's almost always the way astrology is characterized popularly. But for the people who originated it, that's not what it was. It was a way to understand the present moment. It was a sign for the times. What does this sign mean right now? What does this appearance in the sky mean right now? One of the influential 20th century astrologers kind of brought this into focus. His name is Dane Rudhyar, R-U-D-H-Y-A-R, when he said, the essential purpose of astrology is not so much to tell us what we will meet on our road as it is to suggest how to meet it and the basic reason for the meeting. Which quality in us, which type of strength is needed to go through any specific phase of our total unfoldment as an individual person. So that's a very different view of what these signs can reveal. For the ancient people, it was signs in the sky. It was converted into a system that became signs on paper. You can see the signs on paper right here on the right-hand side. That's Liz Green, very famous British astrologer, lecturing on individual astrological charts. And you see the division of the circle into the 12 behind her. Over here is a British astrologer, a very famous British astrologer from the time of Shakespeare. This is William Lilly. He codified a great deal of existing astrological knowledge of his time and made it into a system for answering questions based on the time the question is asked. So again, that's in the present moment. Here we have very influential American astrologer Robert Hand, who extended Dane Rudhyar's psychological interpretation of astrology, and the celebrated astrologer of Ronald and Nancy Reagan. This is Joan Quigley, looking at some astrology charts here in front of her on her desk. So that's just a few examples of how astrology has expressed itself through and in the folk here as these leading astrologers that made a big impact on the astrological field. And I think what I would leave you with is this idea of Rudhyar's, that what we're trying to accomplish in divining from signs is not the future, but an understanding of the present moment and what we might do with it constructively.
Oh, thank you so much, Maureen. That was a wonderful talk. I really appreciate everyone for joining us. We're able to bring this to you with Arkansas Folk and Traditional Arts. We often call this AFTA. We're the state folk arts program that's housed at the University of Arkansas, but we serve the entire state. And we host this series. We offer a community scholars training program a few times a year, and we have an apprenticeship program currently accepting applications. We do a lot. You can learn more about us at folklife.uark.edu. Should have said that in the beginning, but I wanted to add a little bit about AFTA before I opened it up to any questions. And again, thank you so much for attending.
I had another question. I just wondered, I guess it's not really a question so much as a comment, but I think it's interesting that nowadays I feel like a lot of folks do astrology without ever even actually looking at the sky while they do it, because with the internet and everything, and I don't know, I just think about all the amount of mathematics and stuff that went into it versus now where you can like find a website and plug in your details and the chart comes up. I think it's an interesting change in the tradition.
A huge change. You're absolutely right. And it's the same change that has affected the entirety of humanity and culture, isn't it? It's becoming, increasingly technological and mathematical. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would really like to get to a dark sky myself, and I would really like to facilitate that experience for other people too.
Uh-huh.
We have some major eclipses coming up in 2024. That'll probably cause some people to get out and look at the night sky, I hope, but don't look at a solar eclipse though.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't want to be looking at that. No.
I have another question for you, Maureen. So often when you look, not often, when you look at your chart, different aspects of your sign fall in, the different areas. Are each of those weighted the same amount of, are they all equally important to your personality, or are the top three, sun, moon, and rising is what people say online, at least, are those more important than the other aspects?
That's a great question. And that's part of what you learn when you start working with astrology a lot. Where are we from the beginning? Okay, let's go back up here to that. Great question by Lauren. What should one pay attention to primarily in the chart? Is it the sun, moon, and ascendant, or something else? The sun and the moon and the ascendant are certainly critical factors in a chart, but also important are any clusterings of planets like that right there, and the aspects. In this particular chart, there's an aspect that's very easy to see. It's the moon at 22 degrees of Aries, exactly opposite Neptune at 21. Those are the same degrees in opposite, almost the same degrees in opposite signs. So that's what's called a tight opposition. So one would want to pay real close attention to that. And that opposition just happens to be also linked into this clustering here. So you can be pretty sure that this is going to be a major factor in this person's way of thinking, set of choices, and also maybe some of the character failings or faults would come out of this same symbology. Does that help, Lauren? Yeah. It's all important. It's all important. What is more important? Very hard to say. One thing we didn't talk about or haven't talked about yet would be transits. And that's how the moving planets in the solar system activate all of this. So that can cause one or another part of your chart to become extremely important for a set period of time, and then not so much later on. Like, for example, right now, I can give you an example in this chart here. The planet Jupiter these days is sitting at about 8 degrees of Aries, which would be about right here, symbolically. And that's quite close to my own Jupiter, or this Jupiter of the chart, and directly opposite the Mars of the chart. So it's really raising up the Mars of the chart and the Jupiter of the chart right now. And for as long as Jupiter is sitting in that 8-degree position right there, it will do that. And Jupiter moves kind of slowly compared to others, so it's going to be a month or 2 or 3 that will really be a period where this and this are emphasized enormously. And then when Jupiter gets out of that way, not so much so, it'll be something else.
Okay. What happens if the planets are going, if it's going through an area where there's like not really anything, like right here?
Right here.
Does it like come, oh, you can't see what I'm pointing
Well,
out.
there are some empty houses.
Right. So but yeah, right there where you were, I don't know the symbols of all this stuff.
Okay. Right here.
Aquarius and Capricorn, and then like that's a blank spot, but then across from it you have something going on in Leo, right? So is there an effect there the same
Yes,
way?
yes, excellent question. Currently transiting Pluto is 27 degrees Capricorn, which would put it right in here. And I'm going to say right there to show that it's the moving Pluto and not my own. I'm pointing with the cursor out here. So yes, it's activating this whole house for me, but there are no planets in there for it to activate, but it's activating everything that has to do with the 12th house. So what we do in that case is go to the list of what the houses are about and look at what's being activated by that planet's presence there. Because it is activating that house. It still does activate something.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's part of the answer. And let's see, whoops. And then you also picked out Pluto and Leo being aspected by Saturn. Saturn is currently 22 degrees Aquarius, like right in here, 21 degrees Aquarius, directly opposing Pluto. So it's raising up the importance of Pluto in the seventh house for a couple of months, or well, most intensively for a couple of weeks, and then generally for a couple of months, and then not so much so later on. And that generates definite effects in a person's life. Absolutely. You can see it, feel it, and see it. In fact, as these conditions change, it's what brings up the changing conditions of a person's life, you know? Things are not always the same. Sometimes you're dealing with one particular type of issue that's just real strong for a period of time, maybe 2-3 months, maybe a year or more, and then it's not an issue, and wasn't before and won't be later. It's a life learning, but it doesn't continue in just the very same way. You know, we've all seen that in our lives. So according to Dame Rudyard's theory, what you basically do is you use these periods of transit to think about what's going on and see if you can see the symbolism, and then either don't overreact to it or react to it in a thoughtful way that's kind of mediated by your understanding of those symbols. Does that help at all?
Yeah, no, that was great. That makes a lot of sense.
And with Saturn acting on my Pluto, you know, I'm getting a blast of Pluto and Saturn. So let's go back to look at what their fun little characteristics are all about. Saturn, limitation, duty, responsibilities. Pluto, death and resurrection. Transformation. Whoa. Yeah. Yeah, you know, so like that's
it's
not
a time
party.
for stress and introspection is what
Yeah,
I see.
it's not party time. No, it's definitely not. Yeah, so there it is. So what is happening in my life is I'm trying to finish up my doctoral dissertation. Need I say more? Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. So I really liked your presentation, and especially sort of the historical, I don't know, basis, for how it's evolved. And the quote that you included, I think it was on the last slide, about sort of how to apply astrology. Also, I'm working from home. There's a kitten in my lap, so if you hear a weird background sound, it might be purring. um, but it kind of reminded me of what I've heard people say about tarot cards, that like rather than kind of like predicting the future, it's really more about reflecting on yourself and how you're approaching whatever's happening in your life. And I was wondering if there's any kind of like folk tradition connection, or if there's any, I mean, I don't know that much about either tarot or astrology, other than what's kind of in the zeitgeist, I guess. But it seems like there's a connection, but I was wondering if like there's any kind of historical or cultural, like definitive connection to those two things.
Well, the answer to your question is they're closely related. The symbolism of the zodiac and the symbolism of the tarot cards, yes, are very closely related. Different cards in the tarot deck are incarnations of the signs of the zodiac. For example, the moon card, number 18, that's an incarnation of everything to do with the lunar symbolism and which of the signs does lunar symbolism go with? Well, the sign of Cancer. So it's got to do with their new Cancer. And you can see in the moon card has the two towers and then the little crab crawling up out of the water, that's Cancerian symbolism. So yeah, it's right there. That's astrology and tarot are right together. The tarot cards symbolize a lot of things. There is astrological symbolism in numerous of the cards. And of course, the minor suits, number 4, there are 4 of them, and they can be correlated to the very same elements that you find the signs are in astrology: fire, earth, air, and water.
Cool.
Different sources give different associations, but most sources say wands are fire, cups are water, pentacles are earth, and swords are air. Yeah. And so, once you've learned what your element psychologies are, you've learned the 4 suits, much about the 4 suits of the tarot deck, of the minor suits, that is, the minor arcana. And the major arcana, goodness, they're just full of astrological symbolism. And yes, they arose out of the same period of time, basically the early days of the Italian Renaissance, though they both have earlier antecedents in Middle Eastern practices. But the type of astrology that I do and we use in the West was advanced greatly during the early days of the Italian Renaissance, and that's about the period of time that the tarot cards showed up too. So that would be late 1300s, early 1400s. Cool. I think the first deck was around sometime in the 1200s. It was actually a game of some sort before, and evolved into cards that could be used for contemplation.
Thanks.
You're welcome. There's a lot more to it than that. There's plenty of literature on it, but your question is good and your answer is basically yes. What else, anybody?
Ooh, I feel like I'm gonna have to think about it and email you later.
Okay. If anybody wants to continue their exploration of the of Shakespeare's use of the doctrine of correspondence and astrological terms, you can email me and get the entire paper on that, which is called Shakespeare's Veiled Advocacy of Religious Tolerance, I believe, or something like that. It's a paper I wrote. Just ask me for the Shakespeare paper. Reach me at Starsong, STARSONG 1208 at gmail.com. That's Starsong 1208 at gmail.com. And I'll be glad to hear from you, or any other question, or just whatever you might want to say. I'll be happy to hear from you.
Well, thank you so much. This was so cool. I'm so glad that this is being included in our series on folklife traditions, because I think it helps people to understand that the idea of folklife and tradition is a lot broader than sort of your stereotypical assumptions about what folklore is. So,
well, we have Lauren Willette to thank for that, because she's the one who perceived it and saw it. And yeah, I agree with you totally. And it comes back to that notion of intangible heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to me, that was a new concept, and I was glad I learned about it. And intangible heritage is a class of heritage that is recognized by the relevant United Nations agencies, mostly UNESCO. It's a portion of humanity's experience that lies in the areas of beliefs, understandings, particularly having to do with humanity's relationship with the cosmos, with art forms and bodies of knowledge and beliefs and practices that embody or attempt to go deeper into an understanding of the meaning of being human and the connection with the greater environment that we're in. So that's part of what intangible heritage is defined as. There's some very neat and nifty definitions of intangible heritage that you can find on UNESCO's various websites. Or if you're just really curious about it, you can ask your local heritage studies students, and we'll tell you the names of books and authors that talk about it.
Yep. Okay. Thanks so much, Maureen. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you so
Welcome.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah,